SRS, help, SRS. Hey there, guys. Joe Simons, like diamonds. Salt Strung here. You're wondering, Joe, have you lost your mind? It's SOS. No, it's not. It's SRS, and I truly do need your help, and it's going to take less than 60 seconds. Here's the deal. We've been approached multiple times by these advertisers who want to advertise on our podcast. We've said no to all of them because here's what they want to do. They told us on a 30 to 40-minute show, they want to put 9 advertisements. That means like every few minutes it is going to abruptly stop, and you're going to have to sit through a dumb advertisement. We do not want you to put you through that. It's a bad user experience. We are here to impact as many people as possible. So instead of us taking advertising money, all we ask in return is you do this one thing. It's going to take 60 seconds. It's the SRS. It's subscribe. That takes literally 1 second. If you're on iTunes, pause it right now. You can hit subscribe. If on Stitcher, same thing. So subscribe is number 1. R is review. Just take a few seconds and review this podcast. That's the number 1 way that Apple shares and recommends this to as many people as possible. It helps us make a massive impact and make sure that we never have to put ads on here. And the other one is to share it with anyone you think might love this message. So SRS, subscribe, review, and share. It would mean the world to us, and it helps get this message out there and this podcast out to as many people as possible and keeps it completely ad-free. So here is the message in the podcast for today. Hope you enjoy it. And if you can, please, 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 SRS, help, subscribe, review, and share. Thank you guys. Love you. Talk to you soon.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons, like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds. Icast this, Icast that. We're back from Icast. Got my boy Justin, got Wyatt. What's up, guys?
What's going on, Joe?
What's up? Well, Icast was quite eventful. We are worn out. And I guess we'll start off by saying the one thing really going around that was unique was COVID. And I think Wyatt might even have it. There's a chance I might as well. Who knows? Wyatt, how you feeling, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing all right. The thrill of seeing all the new products that Icast has just kept my soul so warm. So whatever COVID has got for me, the joy of Icast will beat that out.
Yeah, it's unfortunate when you get whatever they had 14,000 people, and and you're shaking hands all day and going out to dinner, and there's all kinds of parties late at night, and we were not partaking in the partying part, but we did do dinner both nights. And what's crazy, at least the 2 different companies I had dinner with both nights, they all called me shortly after, like a couple of days later, and like, yeah, we all got COVID. I was like, lovely. So I will be very, very lucky if I avoid it. And you guys were with me the second night there, and one of the head guys there came down with COVID. So it's unfortunate, but we're gonna bear through it and talk about things that we saw, things that were cool. Talk about some of the best of category. There's a bunch of them. Some. There's a lot on apparel, things that don't really matter so much to actually catching fish. We're going to focus more on things that help you catch fish versus, just, maybe avoid a sunburn and look good. So who wants to start it? What was some cool takeaways, some moments? Justin's already raising his hand.
I'm all over it. I wait every year for Icast. It's the most fun event that happens in the fishing industry. You catch up and see so many people everybody says, oh, it's a small world, small industry. It really is. Even though we're talking about thousands of people through degrees of separation. Wyatt knew guys from Texas. Joe, you've known people for many years. And it's kind of nice to be able to just, even if it's for 30 seconds, say hi to everybody you only get to see at this massive venue for a day or two, out of the year. Icast is massive. There is no way from a business standpoint that everybody can see everything at that show. So it requires us to really kind of dial in specifically for the inshore market, what we want to look at, what we want to have our ear to the ground on, who we want to, what products we want to check out. And I kind of did a quick sweep through after the show to be like, all right, who did we chat with? Let me look at my notes and realize, man, there was still more that we couldn't see. And we were just hustling all 3 days, running booth to booth, making sure we can get to meetings and look at products. But I mean, start with the core stuff. Let's look right at Daiwa. We came by and met with the president of the company and everybody there, and I got to see a couple new products. I think the big highlight for them, Joe, something you got to play with and you really were excited about was their Exist. They
Holy
redid their
smokes.
new Exist series, and you want to talk about like sharp chrome, like all chrome everything. It is a beautiful reel, and they really kind of improved the gearing inside of the reel. So they've really taken things up to a new level on their Exist. It's already their highest end series of spinning reel. They've kind of given it a cosmetic boost, and then they found different materials to lighten the weight of their rotor, of their spool, how they support the pinion gear. They're really kind of re-engineering every time they tackle a new rendition of that Exist, and it just takes it to like an unmatched level. So we came out earlier this year, but we got to like feel it and test it out at Icast, and you could see your face. You're like your reflection in the reel. It's so shiny, but it's buttery smooth.
It's the smoothest inshore spinning reel I've ever felt. And if you guys are really dying to see a little bit more, I'm probably going to buy one here in the near future. I already own one, and a lot of it is that whole lifetime, guarantee warranty. I heard they might have changed a few things on it, but at least the one I have currently, you can send it in for service, and when they receive a Daiwa Exist in their service department, it trumps everything else and goes to the top, and they work on that first and then send it out usually the next day. So I just sent mine in it's been a year and a half, and a year and a half of using something every week in saltwater, it's naturally not going to be as smooth as it was the day after. I've never taken it apart. I've just put a little bit of water on it every time. So I sent it in for service, and I had it back. I mean, I overnighted it with tracking, and then they paid to overnight it back. And I had it back in three business days. It was crazy fast. And I guess something had happened with the handle. They didn't, I didn't even realize there was a handle issue, but they replaced the handle, which, was $90. Obviously no charge to me, but that's how much a handle costs on those Daiwa Exists. It shows the price, and then it says zero balance for me. That's crazy. And as long as I don't lose it or drop it in the water and never find it again, I can keep doing that over and over again. Pretty slick.
Yeah.
But yeah, that thing is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, again, like the Exist and some of these super high end $700-800 plus reels are very expensive, but that warranty service program easily makes up for it, because to be able to have that VIP, turnaround in a couple day, no questions asked, everything's going to be covered and replaced and paid for. I think some people might think that's kind of inherent with any warranty program from a manufacturer, but it's not. I mean, service and labor is a cost involved. Replacements of parts are cost involved for any series of reels. So I think, Shimano does it for their top tier. Daiwa does it for their top tier as well. And it may seem like a high investment in the beginning, but in a year's time, if you send it, there and back once, or a period of 3 to 5 years, a couple times, all those little parts and pieces add up. And it's there's only a small handful of people in the world that can really kind of service those tier of products. So I think it pays for itself really in a short period of time.
So smooth. But yeah, great meeting with Daiwa overall. And as we already teased on a prior podcast, we're coming up with a physical tackle store. And Daiwa, obviously, we let them know about that, and they're excited. All the manufacturers are pretty excited about that. The fact that we'll have a place to add a lot more lines, right, and also a place to test products that we can bring people in from all over the place. And this tackle store that we're looking at is going to be on the water, so a place you can literally go out there and make casts and maybe even catch a fish or two. So everyone was pretty stoked about that. And we talked about rods, with Daiwa. I was impressed. I had not prior, really been a Daiwa rod guy. I love the reels, but the rods, a couple of those inshore rods were pretty legit. And I know what you were looking at the surf rods, and we're a little bit excited by those. It seems like they've taken their rod game up a level.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, out in the Outer Banks, one of the number one rods that's out there is the Hatteras Heaver, and Daiwa made an addition for the surf rods. That's been a staple for a long time over there. But they had some new stuff at Icast. I was going through the lineup there. Everything down from just kind of some best value kind of budget options all the way up to me and Justin. We're looking at some of the componentry on the high end surf rods, and there's some pretty serious stuff over there. So interested to get my hands on some of that, test it out, see how that goes. But yeah, it seems like they are definitely stepping up their game with rods for sure. And Justin, I know you were looking at some of the inshore stuff. What was it? The LT Salt?
I mean, I actually was looking at, they have their Kage series, which is kind of it's a real series in that $300 price point. They have Kage rods, they have Tatula rods. They had one rod that was in the $100 price point that was a new series that they offered, and it's including their X45 bias construction. I'll kind of get into that in a second, but just feeling it in hand, looking at the cosmetics, getting the lengths and the powers and actions they had listed, I thought, man, for $100, that's pretty good, guys. Like, before they started bringing in the production of all of their rods in-house and did everything top to bottom, from the blank rolling to, they even have their own series of components, their AGS guides that are on some of their higher end rods. X45 bias construction is carbon wraps at a certain angle up and down the rod. It's on their Ardito travel rods. It's on their TD Soul inshore rods, and it really reinforces hoop strength. So it kind of gives it additional power to the rod and helps prevent potential breakage, which I think is what some guys might look at other companies and be like, man, it's not a company I thought of as a rod company. Maybe they're just throwing rods into the mix, but Daiwa has a lot of quality control because they build everything in-house.
Yep.
Like, it's their series, it's their factory, it's their everything. It's not just a punch and go operation. So, feeling out some of their Tatula lineup, which is a really big series of reels, both baitcaster and spinning in the freshwater market. But there is a Tatula spinning that is kind of like the ballistic light, if you will. It's like a non-mag sealed ballistic, but everything about it is identical. They now have a bunch of different rod series for that. It felt really good. I mean, I don't know that they have many inshore focused rod kind of pursuits. They have their back bay series. They have the TD Soul, and sometimes the actions are a little too slow or a little too fast. But we're starting to feel more, and they're making more every year. And we're starting to kind of guide them to say, hey, this length, this tip action, this power, this more accurately represents what, inshore guys here in Florida and a lot of the Gulf states are looking for with presenting soft plastics. And they're kind of getting that mark. So I have a good feeling that, by early to middle of next year, before Icast, they're probably going to have another saltwater series that is like spot on, So they've done a lot. They've come a long way in terms of like rod building for both freshwater and saltwater guys.
Yeah. And speaking of getting closer and closer to the mark, 13 Fishing, I want to give them a shout out because we went there shortly after. That had been a company that I obviously we're aware of 13 Fishing, use some of their stuff. And I always look at them as more of a freshwater brand. And I think they still primarily are, but they've moved heavily into saltwater. And 2 years ago, their saltwater reels were, but now, dude, pretty legit. We're going to buy some and review them ourselves. And that's the cool part of what we do is we spend our own hard-earned money and buy them. And so that way we get to say the pros and the cons of this stuff. So thoughts real quick. We don't want to spend too much time since we haven't actually used it yet, but that was the first time I walked away from 13 Fishing booth and saying, man, like this could be some exciting reels and rods.
Yeah, definitely don't discredit the brands that might not have that, that crazy presence like Shimano, Penn, and Daiwa. I mean, those are the triad that I think a lot of people, at least in the inshore world, look at and say, man, those are the three on top. And if they're not those three, then they're of lesser quality or whatnot. I don't think that's the case. And I think, I've kind of always had my eye out for 13 Fishing. They had their Omen Green series of rods made 6 or 7 years ago. A couple of us, Luke's used their Omen series, their Envy Black series of rods. And they made rods way before they started doing soft plastic lures and then starting to make reels. They have 3 reels. I can't remember the third one off the top of my head, but they have an Axum and they have an AL13. And just feeling their Axum series, which is in that 150 to 180 retail price point, and talking to the product designer that's been with them for a number of years. I believe his name is Matt. Is that correct? The guy knew his stuff. Like when you talk to somebody and you can tell pretty quick whether it's just regurgitation of like tech and specs, or it's somebody that's really just been involved in the nuts and bolts of the entire process and has been talking about it so much that it's just like breathing to the guy. The way they approach things and how they create these synthetic, or I wouldn't say synthetic, these composite bearings that are these corrosion-free bearings. They're not like the traditional ceramic bearings, or whether they're sealed or shielded or whatnot. The material and the way that they make the bearings to support their baitcasters and spinning reels are anti-rust bearings. Like, they are corrosion-resistant bearings for the lifetime of the reel. And they approach body design differently, how they layer their drag stack of their spinning reels. All the water entry points that could be on that spinning reel have been assessed. They're really, I mean, they made a good move with that. So we had a chance to feel it out. And I kind of talked to the product guy and said, hey, what about this, this, and this? These are the things that insurer guys are looking for. And he was on it. I mean, he was like, yeah, we've already considered that. We got rid of this. We made sure there's physical seals here from, top to bottom, better heat dispersion on the drag stack. And we just went into it. I thought, all right, it's pretty cool. So I'm gonna have to give me one of these and play with it, and and give it a gold run around. But I got to tip my hat to them. They've made some really good moves. Even the rods too, right, Wyatt? We played with some of the rods they had, and I've kind of always looked at some of their Omen Green, which is like their base inshore series of rods. They've grown from that. Now I think they have like Omen Gold. They have other, I don't know, I have a bunch of different series, but some in that 7.6 medium and medium light category. Not all of their mediums or all of their medium lights in 7.6 feel exactly the same, which if you go to a rod company, you might say, all right, if one company makes 3 or 4 different rods and they're all 7'6" medium power, fast action, you would think that they're all going to be about the same in terms of how they feel, but different cosmetics, different components, different this and that. No, like, they're all made on different mandrels. They're all each application specific series. So I saw that and felt that and thought, okay, a lot of thought was put into making these rods. It's not just re-cosmeticed up and put out there to have different families of rods and reels. They put a lot of time into making them unique in their intended application. So, I mean, good stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing more stuff by 13 Fishing.
Yep. And then what? Z-Man, we moved over to Z-Man. They're always innovating and coming up with some cool stuff. I think we already published that video pretty quickly.
Yeah, Wyatt, talk about that, man. We came by, met with Glenn Young. He's the national sales manager with Z-Man. Been with him for a long time. And we first talked about a lure we added into our shop. They've expanded a lot on Slam Shady. And when we made that video with them, we just kind of talked and said, man, look at how far we've come. Like, Slam Shady's been out only for a handful of years.
Yeah.
Started with Z-Man and the 3-inch Minnow Z, the paddle tail, and then grew into bigger paddle tails and then jerk shads and then a shrimp lure. And then just recently, in the past year, a finesse TRD, right? So take it away. Like, we talked about that, and then some other lures that they're working on in the future.
Yeah, so the TRD was really cool to see, which, Pat probably popularized it the most out of the entire group. He went out, and I remember he had just a banner day finesse fishing with a bass lure. And it's a really great lure to use in the dead of winter, or the absolute heat of summer. You're trying to get picky fish to eat, but that Slam Shady color, we know it and love it. And so it was nice to see that on the TRD. But what was also awesome, and I believe Z-Man won the best in show for soft plastic lure with their kicker crab, which the one they had in the tank was a Slam Shady colored kicker crab. And we did a video on that one as well. It'll be coming out here soon. But that one was really interesting to me. Most of the crab lures you see out on the market, they're either those kind of harder, soft plastic outside lures like the crusty crabs and the smash crabs. They're really heavy. They're a little bit awkward. They don't have a whole lot of action to them. They work. I've caught fish on them. Luke likes to use the crusty crab for sheep's head, but there's never really been a good presentation for redfish that I see tailing, looking for crabs. And I think this one's going to be the ticket. It looks a little bit like a paddle tail, as you guys will see in the video, but it's got like a claw. If you've ever seen a blue crab swimming around on the flats, it's like a blue crab that's swimming and it's got a claw trailing behind it. And the footage we got of it swimming around in the tank, it looks super realistic. I'm going to be throwing it at redfish, but it was cool to see that the color they chose to, debut it in for the little tank was the Slam Shady color. So I thought that was very nice of Glenn to do that.
Yeah, that at first I didn't really understand it, and then I love the fact they had that underwater tank there. You could see it. I was like, this is pretty cool. I like this. And innovative, and that's really what these awards are for. If you're wondering, how do you get this best of category, best in class? It's really on innovation. That's really what they want to reward people for, right? Is coming up with new stuff. on the flip side, there's been some things that have won in the past where we're all kind of scratching our heads. It looked innovative, but it never even caught a single fish, and maybe still hasn't today. Not going to pick on anyone there. But the cool part is, and I think we should all appreciate this, as consumers, that these manufacturers are going out and trying to do new things, right? And sometimes it doesn't work. Many times it does. But a lot of these things that are best of category are new, right? And this is if you don't know the kind of the history behind Icast, been around forever, and it was a place for manufacturers to showcase their new products or new services or whatever it is. But mostly it's a product based thing, and then you have people like the media and even some of us who get a chance to vote. So it's the voting is. I don't know how many people get to do it, Justin. It's not everyone who comes, but certainly the media and
media and retail. I mean, that's pretty much it. It's
yeah.
just media and retail to get to be able to place the votes for who wins best in show of whatever category. And there's 20 plus categories from, apparel to even now custom rod building and tackle accessories to saltwater and freshwater categories of rods, reels, lures, terminal tackle. It's a lot.
Yeah. Yep. So that's kind of how it's done. So the voting is done internally. It's not based on the water experience or even any split testing or, hey, does this thing even catch fish or help me? It's more based on what we're seeing is, wow, this is truly innovative and or looks awesome, feels awesome, etc. So once again, we'll some of it we'll be able to tell later if it actually works well on the water or not. And that's part of our job, right? Is to get this stuff in our own hands and actually test it. So, but it's always cool to see what people are coming up with. And some of the stuff's wild. The one company, I was like, please don't let there be another cooler. And that dude, fascinating story. He was like, his best friend died in his arms. I don't know if you guys heard the whole story about that cooler that won, but it has everything. I mean, from cutting tables to you could literally live in it if you wanted to. Really, really, really wild. And the dude's story is pretty incredible. Wyatt, what was next? What was another big company that you enjoyed and or had some eye-opening moments with?
Yeah, so we got a chance to talk to Dr. Matthew at Cashin, and I've started to get a little bit more into fishing with bait casters, which it was really cool talking to 13 Fishing, seeing that Concept Z. But in terms of rods, I've not really found one that I'm a big fan of yet. I've just kind of been using what's popular, what I see other folks using for the application. And I got to go to 13 and talk to Dr. Matthew and learn a little bit more about, he's an actual doctor that's worked with the, Justin, you can break it down, but the resins and all of the different componentry that goes into those rods, really, really, really thought through what they were doing with their new Icon series. And they've got a bunch of different lineups there. But I think that was something really interesting for me because I've not really found a rod for my bait cast reels that I really, really enjoy. But to get a chance to play around with that and learn a little bit more about all that was really, really cool. We did film a video on that. That'll be coming out soon as well. But those Icons are pretty awesome. And I can't wait to use one here soon, fishing for some trout with my bait cast reels.
And Cashin's all made in USA too. And just great company, great values. Loved all the people. That was a fun meeting.
Yeah. One thing that caught my ear when you were talking is you're like, hey, I didn't really play with a lot of Cashin because at least over in Texas, they're not as popular and they might not be as present. And it struck me for a second because the crazy thing about fishing and tackle and products or intended application, if you will, just because something isn't as popular in that region doesn't mean that there's other things out there that you might not know about that are way, way better. And Cashin is an interesting story. Dr. Matthew Cashin has his PhD, I believe, in material sciences, specifically in polymers. So he created a resin, which is essentially the glue that it's inside. It's pre-impregnated or pre-preg in these carbon fiber sheets. He's incorporating this resin in high-end Toray carbon fiber or another brand carbon fiber to make rods. So they make all the rods in Stanford, North Carolina. And just seeing and talking with him in the video about the evolution of when they started. And he's like, the first time he made a batch of 24 rods and they were so giddy because they're like, oh my God, these are the first rods we've ever made here in our company, to where they're at now, where their Icon series, there's color coordinated rods for specific applications. And there's mandrels, which are these steel rods that you bake this graphite and this pre-impregnated resin up the mandrel. They have different thicknesses and lengths. There's different materials, and that's what gives you your different actions and powers for all types of rods. And when Wyatt went over to feel some of their 7-foot light and medium light rods, and their 6.8s and their 6.4s and 7.2s, I mean, they're all different. You could really tell, like, man, there are so many different blanks that are used. Even though it's all Icon series, there's so many different intended applications. And we were just really impressed by the science that's put into this. You know, the team at Cashin, I mean, they're all very family oriented. All the guys there treated us like we were part of the team and family. And the final product itself, it's simple, but it's very purposeful. The resin that they use is lighter in weight than other traditional resins. So the rod's going to feel lighter in hand. You know how when you feel a rod up and down the blank of the rod and it feels smooth and glossy, and as I go, ooh, that's nice. Well, it's not like that. It's this cat skin texture, which feels kind of rough and edged. And someone might feel that and say, oh, that doesn't feel, smooth and glossy. But that's intentional. It's an unsanded finish. They don't add all the extra glue and coating on top of the rod, which ultimately weighs it down and kind of mutes some of the sensitivity on the rod, but you don't lose any power. So even though it's a lighter density resin that's used in rods is kind of a necessary evil. Like if you can make a rod without resin and it perform the same way, or glue to bind everything and all the fibers properly, you'd have the lightest rod and strongest rod on earth, but you need to have a resin. So they did it themselves. Like that is a core component in rod design, and they found a way to make it better. Really cool. Luke has been using a 7'4", 10 to 20 pound medium heavy baitcaster, and he's been whooping snook around Dick Meisner Bridge and some really heavy structure with pretty fast current, getting 32-inch plus snook at night. So the rod's held up. One cool little thing on their Icon series, you've seen microwave guides, which are those guides that have one guide and then the other guide right on top of it, right? Like on the Fitzgerald Aquadream. They use micro guides, and it's like number 3 or number 4 size baitcast rings. And they're very, very small. I think it makes a lot of sense for baitcast applications because on the aperture of line coming off a baitcaster, it's not like the diameter of a spinning reel. It's just coming out of this little chute on your level wind, and it's going down a straight run on the rod. So using all running guides that are all the same size, number one, the smaller guide is going to allow for more space on the blank. It's going to help for transfer vibration much easier. You don't have heavier guides weighing down the rod. Number 2, the rod's going to be lighter overall. And number 3, because it's so small, I believe it's going to be more impact resistant, because a bigger guide with those bigger ceramic inserts is just more room for failure. So if you are accidental and you hit the T-top of your boat, or you hit a fan or anything like that, the bigger exposed area of ceramic on those traditional guides are just an area that can chip and get damaged. So to go that micro route, it may seem really small, and I'm sure someone might see it and say, "Ooh, is it gonna impede my cast? Like, is my line even gonna go through it?" But 20, 30, up to probably 50-pound braid for flipping applications, they're rock solid. I mean, you don't notice any decrease in casting distance, and it just kind of refines and helps with the trajectory of where that lure is supposed to go at the end of the tip of that rod. So a lot of little things done. I admire Dr. Matthew Cashin's and the team's focus on keeping things simple but purposeful. The things they've done to the rod is from a good tech standpoint, but it's a very clean looking rod, but it doesn't have all the hollow gloss finish and the carbon fiber etched wraps and the crazy looking metal reel seats. How much of that is application and how much of it is showmanship. Like, you got to kind of decipher that. I applaud them. They did a great job on their products.
Yep. Doctor. Speaking of rods, TFO, our boys from TFO, if you guys have followed Salt Strong for any amount of time, that's the one brand that we continue to promote and use ourselves because we buy them ourselves. I have, I don't know, now over 10. Luke's probably got over 20 TFO rods. I think they're just some of the best overall value. They're consistent. That TFO Pro, I just don't think you can, I still haven't found anything personally that beats it in that price range. I mean, just an amazing rod. And once again, great people, very similar to Cash and Frank Paul there. And they're doing some innovative stuff. We won't spend a lot of time on it because I don't have all the details, but I saw the press release where they're going to start making a lot of their rods in USA. So they've created like a whole separate company right there next door in Texas there to start making rods in-house. And their goal is to get the same rod in terms of quality at the same price without having to raise prices. And a lot of it's just the shipping. I mean, I was astonished when I saw the bill just to ship the clamshells that hold our Power Prawn Juniors. You know, if you guys have bought a pack of Power Prawns, you haven't, what the heck you waiting on? Get some. But the Power Prawns, they come in these, they call it a clamshell. It's a piece of plastic that holds them in and makes sure they're not going to get bent or warped. And I think we pay like $5,000 just in shipping. And it was a massive load of them, obviously, and we needed them, urgently. And I was just like, holy smokes. And so when you eliminate that, all these and that's tariffs and all the other baloney that comes along with it to bring something into the States, because most of these clamshells are all made abroad. It was like, holy smokes, I wish I could just find someone here in America. So if you're in America and you make good clamshells, hit us up. But it was absolutely astonishing how much some of the shipping costs. So anyhow, love our time with TFO, and we're going to continue to put that rod. We're not sponsored by them or any of these companies for that matter. But that, to me, that TFO Pro is just, man, it just keeps on working, super consistent.
Yeah, I think this is the other awesome thing about Icast is to be able to talk to the people that make these products, to talk to the rod designer and learn some things about not just the professional, but the tack inshore. So me and Justin got a chance to learn a little bit more about the differences between those two rods. And I had some like preconceived notions that it was basically the same blank with some different components, maybe just the guides or the reel seat, longer butt section, the exposed blank on the handle. And I thought that's what kind of cooked it up to the next price point. But in talking to the rod designer, I come to find out it's not the same blank. It's made out of different materials. And to learn what applications, almost like a sports car for the tack inshore and a work truck for the professional, to learn those differences. I mean, that's probably the coolest thing about Icast is to talk to these guys, to record videos with them so that we can educate our audience and other anglers out there about the differences between these products. That was probably the coolest thing in talking to TFO, was just learning more about a model that I have used for years and years and years. And I'm still learning things about it when I get to go and talk to the guys that are actually designing this stuff.
Yep. It's good. And then Pure Fishing, had a great meeting with them. If you don't know Pure Fishing, they own a big gazillion brands, including Penn and Berkeley. And so we talked about maybe doing some custom colors, that's all I can say, and some lures that have worked forever. And what else do you want to share about Pure Fishing that we can say publicly, besides they also won an award?
Yeah. So Wyatt helped me out. We got to hang out with Captain John Owens, which you know very well, up in the Carolinas. And we played a little bit with the Penn Authority, which won Best Saltwater Reel at Icast 2022. And rightly so. It's, at first, you might look at it, and at least from a picture, if you haven't had a chance to feel it out in hand, you might look at the cosmetics and say it's still that black and gold design with etching, similar to their Battle and their Slammer 4. But there's so much more to that. So this reel etches up in that $500 price point, which is very expensive. All things considered, I tend to think anything in excess of $250 or $300 is an really expensive reel.
Especially when it does look kind of like a Battle or some of their other stuff. Because I saw it too. Yeah. I was like, man, what do they do differently? And
yeah, right. Like some people might look and say, well, does the price point match the aesthetic of the reel? And some people might say yes or no. I think it looks similar in just looks to other products, but internally how it's made, there's a lot of step ups. So first off, I think their Slammer is an IPX6 rating. The Authority's IPX8. So they're safely categorizing that at 1 meter of depth for a period of, I think it's 30 minutes, which is the IPX rating or ingress protection rating. There's a solid and a liquid category. Solids are negligible for fishing reels. You don't really think about rocks. They're not going to get in the reel. But liquid and air and gas and things, that's really what they're trying to look at. IPX8 to be a submersible reel to 1 meter for 30 minutes. They're confident in that statement. They've beefed up the physical perimeter sealing on the reel. Jot was explaining in the demo video we did with him about the reinforcement of the pinion gear. I think it's a dual or even triple supported bearing pinion gear. People overlook that. What's the point of supporting your pinion gear? Well, when your main gear and your pinion gear meet up and they work together when you're turning the handle, the more secure and rugged that connection is, the more pressure that you can apply to that reel without any of that main gear and pinion wanting to push away from each other. So you have kind of a more fluid reel with the bearings that are working in conjunction and spinning, but they're better braced. So there's a better kind of point in which the two lock together. And kind of speaking of gearing material, they're stainless steel gears. Now, they kind of debuted that last year in their Slammer. It's their higher end. It's the DX, the Slammer DX series, which was like the silver and black cosmetic version of a Slammer. And all that was is it had the stainless gears in it. Well, now the authority is that stainless gear component, that gear, the main gear and the pinion. You have the supported pinion gear with your bearings, and you have IPX8 rating. It's kind of now taking away, they don't believe they have their Torque series of spinning reels anymore, which were those in-house Penn, I believe they were still USA made reels. The Torque was like a Van Staal. It's like a bulletproof, heavy duty, submersible saltwater reel. And now they've taken all the best parts about that reel and they've put it into all the way down to a 2500 size. So now inshore guys that are trying to rock the VS50 Van Staal, for inshore, or their lightest Torque, which was still 15, 18 ounces and change, like still pretty bulky. Now they're refining all this tech into a solid aluminum body into smaller sizes. So these inshore guys can get a very borderline one of the best sealed reels and strongest gear sets on the market, but it's going to come at a premium at that $500 price point.
And it's still heavier than like the super light, like ballistics and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's its own animal. Like Penn is known for being a rugged, built, tough company. A lot of their products, the majority of their products for, inshore and saltwater applications are solid aluminum body. And they're a little bit bigger in overall body size than Shimano and Daiwa that have some more of their carbon composites, a little more focused on throwing lightweight artificials, finesse fishing applications. You can still throw a paddle tail on the 2500 Penn Authority. It's just not going to be nearly as light as a ballistic or as a Vanford or even Shimano's new, I think it's their, I'm going to butcher the name, Mirabelle, I believe. It's their $130 carbon reel. We'll get into that later. But, that's not their focus. That's not their approach. Jod even kind of acknowledged it in the video, is that this reel doesn't do everything. And companies and fishermen should know there's not one reel to do everything. But what it does do in its weight category and what it's punching at, it's pretty impressive. So if you're prepared to spend that price point, this is likely going to be a reel you have for a very long time, because you're never going to have to really worry about getting in there and servicing it or fixing that, that gear set, because stainless is, just so you guys know, and there's a lot to cover, but you don't make stainless gears. One does not simply make stainless steel gears. Like, you will cut up and destroy CNC machining to make stainless gears. So they're blowing through, tooling to make these products. That's why they're not a mass produced product, because they really can't be. So by the time the final product comes out and it's made, it's bulletproof. And that's what Penn's known for.
Yeah, it was really cool to talk. And we're going to have a full video that breaks it down. Jot went through it. It was awesome to see kind of an unbiased look at that reel from him. And I think the main application he was looking at it and kind of describing it was a good tarpon reel, good nearshore reel, a big game reel. I don't think it was really designed for, they do have it down to a 2500 series. And he said he has used it inshore. It works fine. One of the biggest takeaways for me was that it was incredibly smooth compared to most of the Penn reels that I've ever used. They're known for being very bulletproof, very strong, rugged, but that also comes with kind of a heavyweight turn and just has never been super smooth to me. That was kind of one of the first Penn reels that I've held and been very impressed by how fluid it was. But yeah, Justin touched on all the other main, the pinion. That's something you see when you start getting kind of that grinding feeling as you're turning a reel. That's probably not going to happen with that Authority. Just in that rugged stainless steel, the reinforced pinion. It was an interesting product, I would say. I was pretty impressed by Penn with that Authority this year. But again, it's super expensive. It's like, I guess, what do we compare it to? the van stall, it's like a half price van stall. It's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Yep. Speaking of reels, Shimano, we can't have an Icast without talking about Shimano. They always have a massive presence. They did win best freshwater reel with their Stella F whatever X, something like that. But I do want to bring what is the name of the new Shimano reel?
Let's try to pull it up. I think it's called their Miravel.
Here's the deal. Shimano needs to get away from going to Martha's Vineyard and naming reels. They came up with the Vanford, like, oh, take off your cummerbund, boy, and put on the polo, and let's go out fishing in the Vanfords. And the Maryvale, like, it sounds like something they're making up at Martha's Vineyard. That's just me. The first time I heard Vanford, and this is Shimano makes amazing reels, by the way. But man, the naming, I feel like you need to have like a little, you put your little sweater around your neck and the Vanford. I don't know.
I've said it. I mean, I've explained to Wyatt the naming is kind of funny, but and it's different because you look at the rods too, right? You've got the Travala, the Talavera, the Terramar, just
Vineyard.
rods.
Yep.
Well, I mean,
those are names of roads in Martha's Vineyard. Every one of those, they're just literally plucking them off. It's
I don't know. Maybe it is like the Miravel. I didn't get a chance to get my hands on it. We've seen the demo reel for it, and I kind of looked up on some of the specs. At that $130 price point, it's more their balance between a well-sealed reel, like they have their core protect included on the Miravel, and it's their Magnum Light rotor. So they're trying to stay with that lightweight category and have it be a step up from their Nasky, their newest Nasky lineup, which is like that more kind of silver metallic body with some blue accent. The Miravel is a step up from that. I believe it's some magnesium components added to either the rotor or the frame or both to help make it a little bit lighter. And I don't know. I mean, the marketing video that we saw for it was interesting. They were sharing it and fishing it amongst people from all over the place. Some people doing bass fishing, some people doing inshore, some people doing exotics down in South Florida, and the three anglers kind of talking on like a live stream video chat saying, hey, it works well for this, works well for this, works well for this. And sure, all those applications it does. I think it's that category where I've always noticed that whether it's Shimano or Penn or Daiwa or any company, reels in that $120 to $180 category seem to be all kind of they're all at the same table in the lunchroom, if you will. That $100 price point, people are looking and saying, what's the best bang for buck? A Fuego, a BG, even though that BG is kind of getting up there now at about $120. The Penn Battles, I mean, those were the reels that people were looking at about $100. The Shimano Nasky, another good one. And then you jump to the $200 price point. Shimano Stratic, Daiwa BGMQ, Spin Fisher, some of the bigger Spin Fishers by Penn. Between that 100 and 200, a lot of tech changes. But in that 120 to 180, things start getting a little muddied. And I think it's Shimano's attempt at bringing more lightweight componentry to an improved version of their Nasky. At least that's what it looks like just at a 30-second pass by. I'm sure there's more to it. Again, Shimano, Penn, Daiwa are the three meccas for reel production in the industry. And they all kind of bring a little bit different flair to how they make their products.
Yeah. And speaking of those, another trend that we're hearing is that they will be raising prices on most all reels, I would think next year. Most of these companies have not really raised prices this year, even though we know the cost of everything has gone up. And that was one trend that we heard. Don't have exact numbers on any of these brands, but that was a trend that we heard kind of whispering around, is that everyone's like, yeah, we're going to be kind of forced to raise the prices just to remain profitable, which kind of makes sense. So I would be prepared for that in 2023, probably in January, February, March, April, somewhere in the beginning part of 2023. So what else? Oh yeah, go for it.
I wanted to add to that. Shimano did also, I didn't look at everything that they had to offer, but they re-upped the cosmetics of their Terramar series for rods. So the previous Terramar Southeast series, and for those of you that don't know, the Terramar rods, they have a Southeast, they have a West Coast, they might even have a Northeast. They have these color coordinated kind of cosmetics for their Terramar, which is fiberglass graphite composite mixed rod. They're a little bit heavier, but they're super, super durable. And for a while, the Southeast rods were this like aqua blue, green, turquoise look. They got rid of that. And then in the past 2 to 3 years, they had this Terramar XX, I believe, which was their Spiral X and high power construction. They were nice rods, really nice rods, but the Terramars used to be in that $130 to $160 retail price point. And then that next generation of Terramar XX was like $280, almost $300. It was so much more expensive that they just weren't in that classic Terramar feel and price point that they were in for so long. And this year I got to see their, they kind of went back to their old traditional way of doing the Terramar, high-end cork handles, simplistic Fuji reel seat. I think now they're using Sea Guide frames, like tangle-free Sea Guides instead of Fuji component. They have 6 in one, half a dozen in the other in terms of quality. I mean, they're all good guides, but still sticking with that TC4 construction. So very durable rod, kept the same actions. And if you're in Florida and you're a tarpon guy, you know that 8-foot extra heavy Terramar alongside a Star Rod 8-foot heavy and a couple others were like the rods to have for fishing on the West Coast with crabs and throwing live baits on the East Coast. They're still keeping all their same lengths and actions and powers. And I felt the whole lineup. It's really good. It's a good slick move. And then they brought out a Saragossa, I think it's BFC. So it's their billfish compliant or billfish focused spinning reel in the Saragossa. So it's a 14,000. It's only one size, but they're boasting the fastest inches per turn ratio in the industry. I believe it's 53 inches per turn, could be 56. I don't know, but that is crazy fast. So those guys that are tournament sailfish guys, big money tournament guys that are loading out their boat with 10, 12, or 16 identical rods and reels, or they're throwing spinning setups for like pitch base to sailfish, and they want to retrieve on that fish quickly and, leader up a fish boat side and go on to the next sailfish very fast. That Saragossa is kind of in that category. It's a niche made for the sailfish market. I think if you're a tarpon fisherman, anybody that's going after big game, even tuna, and you want to get as fast of inches per turn as you could, that's a good option. So it's a really super high speed reel.
Cool. And with that XX rod, they said, next year they're going to come up with the triple X and it'll be sold everywhere, even in adult super centers. So moving on, where next? Wyatt or Justin here, looking at a time, we got to maybe highlight a couple more cool meetings or brands or new products.
One thing we didn't talk about with Daiwa was the free swimmer. We kind of skipped right over that
point. So the thank you, man. So the free swimmer is Daiwa's bait and clutch. The vernacular, the verbiage just changes, but it's Daiwa's version of the predecessor, the Shimano bait runner. It's been around for a long time. And Daiwa's approach to this was looking at their previous renditions of like a bite and go reel, where on the back side of the reel, I'll have to find a picture and put it up in the blog, there's this little switch, like a lever. If you guys are familiar with the Shimano bait runner, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, Penn makes free, like live liners. This is their free swimmer. But the focus was only in the 8,000 and 10,000 size. And it's because carp guys, right? Freshwater carp guys over in Europe or up north, a carp, when it takes off, you hook up to one, it's moving at 5 miles an hour, slower, 4 miles an hour, maybe 6 if you make it mad. The big saltwater fish, when you hook a big tarpon or a tuna comes by and eats off the backside of a shrimp boat, they're not moving that slow. They're moving much faster, and the gearing and body material and support needed in a reel to combat that type of fish needs to be beefed up. So they created their free swimmer in these bigger categories, and it's essentially the same gearing size and sealing capabilities as their BGMQ, but it's in their kind of bite and go, live lining approach. This like clutch that's on the bottom. So you can adjust the drag setting when the clutch is engaged. And as soon as it's engaged, the drag's really loose. You can, with the dial underneath, tighten it and loosen it. And then when you turn the handle, you hear, and that click will knock forward and you'll kind of engage into your regular drag of the spinning reel to fight that fish. So guys that are tarpon fishing, guys that are trying to free line baits back and don't want the fish to know that they're coming up and eating it and that, hey, there's a hook and a line on the end of this. If you want to keep like a free, smooth, lightweight drag to them and then immediately click over to fighting drag, that's what that reel is made for. Really like bait fish applications.
Yep. It's pretty slick. Cool. What else?
One thing
Yeah.
One thing I saw that was cool, and this is again from Z-Man, was the diesel I Jig Heads. And I've been doing a lot more nearshore fishing, throwing on those rigs. I know Luke's been going off to the reefs and throwing. And they had some sizes that I'm going to be popping some power prawns on and dropping for snapper and cobia and some of those nearshore species that we see on structure. And I've been looking for a jig head that can do that really well. So far, I've really only found that Sea Striker makes bigger jig heads like that that'll fit on those prawns. But that was awesome to see. Finally, one of my favorite terminal tackle companies with iStrike creating that with Z-Man. That's exactly what I'm looking for to go throw on those rigs.
Yeah, and the hook that they use up to I think a 1 ounce or maybe 1.5 ounce is a 6/0, and then they have a 2 and 3 ounce model that's an 8/0. That's a custom hook. That hook is not something you can purchase raw from Mustad or VMC or Owner. It's made just for that jig head, and it's pretty beefy. It's got this bevel into it, got a thicker top side to it. You're never gonna roll out that tip or straighten out that shank of the base. So it's a beefy hook. Like you, I'm gonna pop it on a power prawn, get a 2 or 3 ounce model, and take the power prawn, get some more AJs, maybe get some mutton snapper like we did recently. So that's pretty cool. And then I think my final tip of the hat is the Bull Bay rod guys. So Bull Bay won, I think, the best fly rod in its category with their Banshee fly. And they're a good group of guys. It's a family-run operation in Lakeland, Florida. They've very quickly become one of the premier fishing rod brands here throughout Florida and chunks of the Southeast. They're growing rapidly. I've even seen them make prototypes at a slow pitch jigging rod, which caught me off guard. And I saw it sitting in their rod rack on the back, and I thought, interesting. Are we dabbling into this category now? Because I like the higher end slow pitch jigging offshore stuff. I think they had one new series of rods as well, kind of on top of their brute force, which is their heavy spin, heavy bottom fishing for snapper and grouper. It's got a really crazy thick reinforced EVA foregrip. The thing is like a bat. It's a really thick foregrip, but makes a lot of sense when you're hooked up to a 40-pound gag and need as much control as you can get to lift that rod when you're bowed up and you have all that meat up front. The purpose of building it out like that makes a lot of sense. So they're doing good stuff. I tip my hat to them. They've always been just good-hearted people and make an honest, good product, and they're innovating in their own way. And it's just impressive to see what they're working on.
Yep. And then speaking of rods, Mudhole did win an award. Our friends there at Mudhole, and saw Brooke the next day, and he's like, man, normally they tell you when you're going to win. They kind of tell you beforehand to make sure you're actually there. And he's like, no one told us. So he's like, all of a sudden I'm at dinner, I'm getting texts saying, dude, they're calling your name. You guys just won an award. And he's like, no one was there to get it. But that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it was like their pro rod wrapper. I don't know if it's the CRB brand or if it's under another brand, but they have a manual one, and then they have their high-powered one, their electric one with a foot pedal that you can quickly turn over and wrap your guides, put detailed trim accents, above your foregrip and your winding check to do chevrons and designs on there. Just a slick product, and I think it's a new category for Icast that I'm pretty sure American Tackle and Mudhole, the whole conglomerate brand, they're going to own that. They're going to own that gamut for a long time.
Yep. Other than that, a lot of just back to back meetings, and had great chats with our friends there at Owner and Viet. Always so nice to see everyone. And if you're wondering about the Owner twist locks, they will be here this year. We don't know when, but at some point in the year 2022, we will have those back in store. Those have been sold out nationwide for a while, and a lot of other just great meetings. So great to see everyone, and got to hang out with old Captain Peter Deeks and Bill Dance for a little while, and it's cool just walking the floor and to your point, Justin, just seeing old friends and celebrities in the fishing world, and man, I had an absolute blast. And now just praying that Wyatt's COVID is not bad, and then I don't get it and just doesn't get it. And none of our team, we had 7 of us there, to Justin's point, just to spread out and try to see as many people and companies as humanly possible. So big crew. I noticed this year, and maybe in the past I've just missed it, but they seem to be giving away a lot more stuff. I used to go to the Surf Expo back in the day and come home with a bag of cool goodies and stickers and stuff. And I feel like this year there was a whole lot more of that, which is kind of cool. I tell you, our boys Matt and Cameron, They're going out with backpacks and stuff. It's like, where did you
They
get
made out like bandits.
Jeez Louise. Just nailed it. All right, anything else, gentlemen?
No, I mean, it's a lot to cover.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were a couple of vendors we swang by and didn't get to maybe chat about here on this call, but you just can't hit it all unless you're ready to just do a quick flyby and say hi and bye to everybody. It is impossible to see every single vendor from every category at the show, but it's fast and furious. I mean, think about it. A whole week went by, blink of an eye. Had great dinners, great conversation, getting some projects in the work that we can't really talk about yet, but just really good stuff for Salt Strong and our members here in the future that we're excited to work on. And we'll keep people posted as soon as we can drop the bombs.
That's right. Dropping the bombs. Speaking of dropping that base, we got that Roswell. I had some beers over there and give those guys a shout out. They're the ones who, put the speakers on our boat, and this is the first year ever doing it. And they had a pretty sick booth. Just blaring music all day long. I love it. So,
Oh yeah.
All right, guys, I'm sure you'll have questions. If you do, let us know down below. And one more reason to join the Salt Strong Insider Club is we do give some pretty cool discounts on a lot of the products that we talked about, and have a really cool discount program, even with some new things, as kind of Justin's alluding to, for our members. Our goal is to help you save time and money. So come join us, get completely complimentary access to the Smart Fishing Spots app as well. That is something that I know we can be charging a whole lot of money for. And as of right now, once you get it, it's locked in for life, and we're not charging. At some point, we will charge separate for that. But if you get in, if you're an Insider member now, I want to repeat, you will be grandfathered in. It will be yours forever, along with grandfathering in your rate. We have raised the dues, if you will, before. But once you're in, we grandfather you in, unlike Amazon Prime or Costco or Netflix. When they raise prices, they raise it across the board, even if you've been a member for 15 years. Ours is a little bit different. We like to reward, right, and kind of have some loyalty there for our people who come in early. And so you get grandfathered in, and even if the price is $400 a year, and 5 years from now, you'll still be at the low price today. So that's all at saltstrong.com. We appreciate you all big time. And once again, any questions, let us know down below. Meow. Catch that?
Yeah.
Meow. All right, guys. Appreciate you. We out. Peace.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul.